Melton.
Here.
Pauls.
Here.
Palermo. Here. Festerson.
Here.
Harding.
Here.
Jerem.
Here.
Mr. President.
Here. Would everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for our invocation today by Councilmember Brinker Harding. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This will be in two parts. I told Rich that since our meeting was so short last time, that the taxpayers deserve to get their money's worth, so this might be a little lengthier than normal, but. So I wanted to start out by saying we live in a blessed city, and that one we should really be proud of. So last weekend, a number of us from the council, the county board, a couple hundred people from Omaha went out to San Diego to celebrate the commissioning of the USS Omaha, which is the LCS 12 ship for the Navy. And it was great representation by the city. Susie Buffett is the sponsor of the ship. We had elected officials, the mayor, governor, Congressman Bacon. And it was great. It was great to see Omaha celebrated on a national level. But then when I get home that Sunday and turn the Super Bowl on, and one of the ads that came on, maybe many of you saw it, Peyton Manning, one of Omaha's adopted sons, mentions Omaha in the Universal Studios ad. So approximately 100 million people nationally, another 50 million people internationally, again, get to see and hear about Omaha. And it's something that I think we should be mindful of. And as a council, I just wanted to make sure I read this correctly. I wanted to make sure that we take our responsibilities as a council seriously, and we do, and that we need to do all we can to work together to move the city forward, because we have great potential, but we have a lot further to go, and I want to see that potential realized. So the second part and last part is today is actually the birthday of Ronald Reagan, and so it's not a national holiday, but I did want to acknowledge that and read one of the quotes from Reagan that I like, and that's, he said, "I know in my heart that man is good, that what is right will always eventually triumph, and there is purpose and work to each and every life." Thank you.
An affidavit of publication is on file for the pre-council and city council meeting, and a current copy of the Open Meeting Act is posted in a white binder on the east wall of the legislative chambers.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this version of the Omaha, or this edition of, I tried not to say it. Welcome to this Omaha City Council. The council thanks you for being here today, and as a courtesy to those in attendance, we would ask you to turn off or mute any of your electronic devices. And before we begin the major portion of our agenda today, we have two new hires in the city today that are working in the mayor's office, and I'd like to give them an opportunity to, first of all, be recognized, and if they wanted to say a couple of words, they certainly can. They're we call them the Anderson brothers, but but if you wanted to come down and say a few words, you certainly can. They are two new hires in the mayor's office, and they're going to be primarily working on issues of economic development. Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Kevin Anderson, and we had an opportunity to introduce ourselves to City Council this morning. So just really excited to, work with you, work with the city, and help the city prosper and move forward. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I'm Troy Anderson, kind of introducing ourselves as Owen and Ian. So again, yes, really looking forward to the opportunity to serve the great city of Omaha. And so however we can be of service, please don't hesitate to reach out to us.
Thank you very much, and
Thank
for the
you.
record, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk.
All right, items 6 to 8 relate to the same project and can be considered together for property located southeast of 52nd Street and Ames Avenue. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval. Item 6, an ordinance to rezone this property from R7 to R7. Item 7, an ordinance to rezone this property from R7 to GO. Item 8, an ordinance to amend the boundaries of the MCC district to incorporate this property into that district.
Public hearing on agenda items numbers 6 through 8 are today. Proponents, please. Seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Moved and seconded to approve items 6 through 8. There are no lights. Roll call.
Melton. Pauls.
Yes.
Palermo.
Yes.
Festerson.
Yes.
Harding.
Yes.
Jerem.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Items 6 to 8 are approved, 7-0. Items 9 and 10 relate to the same project and can be considered together for property located at 6152 Military Avenue. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval. Item 9, an ordinance to rezone this property from GI District to MBD District. Item 10, an ordinance to amend the boundaries of the MCC District to incorporate this property into that district.
Public hearing on agenda items numbers 9 and 10 are today. Proponents, please. Seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed. Is there a motion? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Festus.
Thanks, Mr. President. I would just say I support these two items. This is a rezoning to neighborhood business district in a pretty key corner of the downtown Benson area. So this is the northwest entryway into the area, and while there is no development proposal today before us today, I think this is a positive move and will attract what we're looking to achieve there. So I would motion to approve. Thanks.
Moved and seconded to approve items 9 and 10. No further lights. Roll call.
Melton. Pauls.
Yes.
Palermo.
Yes.
Festerson.
Yes.
Harding.
Yes.
Jerem.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Items 9 and 10 are approved, 7-0. Item 11, an ordinance to rezone the property located at 1314 Pierce Street from GI District to NBD District. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval.
Public hearing on agenda item number 11 is today. Proponents, please. Seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, public hearing is closed.
Move to approve. Second.
Moved and seconded to approve item 11. No lights. Roll call.
Melton. Pauls.
Yes.
Palermo.
Yes.
Festerson.
Yes.
Harding.
Yes.
Jerem.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 11 is approved, 7-0. Item 12, a resolution to approve the special use permit for site improvements and use of the overall site as a tribal campus for various uses for property located at 5701 South 85th Circle and 5639, 5723, 5805, 5810, and 5820 South 86th Circle. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval.
Public hearing on agenda item number 12 is today. Proponents, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Brent Peller, 1144 West Center Road, appearing on behalf of the project applicant, the Ponca Tribe of Nebraska. With me today is Chairman Larry Wright and Larry Vogel, both of the Ponca Tribe of Nebraska, along with Doug Andros and Jack Appert of Cross Anderson, the developers, along with Tricia C., the project engineer from Kinley Horn, both out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. Before today is a application for a large project special use permit. This project, or this property in of itself is over 10 acres, so we go with the large project special use permit. But this is the former Info USA corporate headquarters. The project itself is actually made up of 7 different parcels. So we are approximately at South 86th Circle. This is Park Drive. To give you a little frame of reference, Ralston High School is over here on the west side. And then the project kind of, we're close to Ralston, but we're in the right place here in Omaha. This is actually still the city of Omaha. So 7 parcels. The buildings themselves, there's a large building right here that's 123,000 square feet, a second building that's about 20,000 square feet, and then a smaller ancillary building down on the eastern portion of the property, about 9,000 square feet there. This site has sat vacant for about 6 years, so when the tribe came across it, this kind of perked their interest, because currently they're located about 26th and J. They've been there for well over 20 years. They've long outgrown that facility. So this is a great place for them to kind of expand the services that they offer both members and citizens of the tribe and non-citizens alike. So what's being proposed is this is going to be sort of a central focus place for the tribe to bring a lot of their services, a lot of the community gatherings that they have, bring it all onto this site versus 26th and J. So with that, here is the proposed site plan that goes along with the redevelopment. Starting just on the outside, extensive landscaping. This is about a $30 million investment for the tribe, which will continue to stay on the property tax rolls. But extensive new landscaping all down South 86th Circle This will include, about 70-plus trees. Currently, there's no sidewalks on this property, so installation of sidewalks, lighting, those sorts of improvements will be extensively throughout the campus. In addition, there's going to be some exterior remodeling going on, all new roof, all new windows. There's going to be a new canopy that's going to be constructed, so as folks come to the facility, they can go underneath the canopy, go inside, that sort of thing. Obviously, we need to comply with all city standards for stormwater retention, so there's going to be a stormwater retention pond over here on the eastern portion of the property. And then interior, the types of uses that are going to be going on. The reason for the special use permit request is because we're going to be providing or proposing to provide health services. So this is dentistry, pharmacy, wellness care, physical therapy, those sorts of medical type services. Services that won't necessarily be provided within this building would be drug and alcohol type rehab services that's actually done offsite at various facilities. And when I'm done here, I'm going to ask Chairman Wright to kind of get up and maybe go just a little bit more in depth as to those types of services. Community gathering spaces will also be taking place, which also requires a conditional use permit. And that's for, think of youth group type gatherings, potluck dinners, that sort of thing. And then to the immediate south, this is the 20,000 square foot building. This is where they'll have tribal court, executive offices for leaders of the tribe. This again requires a conditional use permit. And then the transportation center, which is this ancillary building down here, the tribe actually provides sort of transportation services to its citizens. So they'll actually go out, pick people up from their homes, bring them to the health clinic, and then go drop them off. So, and there'll be a shuttle that runs folks back and forth. And then finally, there's going to be a cultural service center on the western portion of this site. This is going to be a lot of religious type ceremonies. One of the biggest is a sweat lodge. And again, I'll probably have Chairman Wright speak a little bit more in depth as to what a sweat lodge is and how they use it and why it's very, very important to their culture and their heritage and their sort of their religious beliefs in some senses. But again, that too requires a conditional use permit under the GI zoning district. So with that, the main focus, we've actually spoken to we had a neighborhood meeting back in October. We had another meeting in December. We have met with most of the neighbors. Most importantly, we met with the neighbors right here. Their lot is sort of in the middle of everything that's going on here. So during those discussions, initially we had proposed that the sweat lodge be located right here immediately adjacent to their property. Through those discussions, there were some concerns about having an open fire, which the fire is used to heat rocks in essence, and that's taken in the sweat lodge to create the heat. We actually moved this whole facility west to keep it farther away this is, I think it's a cabinet manufacturing parcel right here. So we moved that farther away to the west. And actually, I have a quick depiction of what that area is supposed to look like, because I do think it gives some frame of reference as to what it looks like, because admittedly, before we got involved in this, I too did not know all that was involved. So this is the sweat lodge. So this building right here is going to be a 3,500 square foot new building. We're looking west, so if you're going this way, that's going to be Ralston High School north. And then the neighboring parcel is over here. This is the cabinet manufacturer. So new building, this will house a kitchen type facility, men's and women's restrooms, so that once folks are done participating in the sweat lodge ceremony, they can go into this building, have a meal, freshen up, that sort of thing. So this is the fire pit, and I'll let Chairman Wright speak a little bit more as to the details and all of this, but I do think it gives a little bit of a frame of reference to show what is being proposed on that parcel. So with that, I'll have Chairman Wright come up and kind of talk just a minute more about their services and then the sweat lodge as well. Yeah. You can keep that too.
Thank you. Larry Wright, Jr., Chairman of the Ponca Tribe. Mr. President, members of the City Council, thank you for this time and for your consideration of our project.
Thank you. Can you give us your address too, please?
I'm sorry, 2602 J Street.
Thank you.
And that's our current location of the Fred Leroy Health and Wellness Center. and it houses our clinic as well as all the tribal services that we provide and proposing for this site here. Just to give you a frame of reference, as was talked about here in this executive office building, that building is larger than what our current facility is to do all of those things. And so you can see how our people are very excited about this opportunity and what it means for us as a whole. This project is in large part a partnership with the Indian Health Service, and we were one of a few tribes, 5 tribes in the whole country that were selected to be part of this program. It's a very time-oriented, very detailed process to get approved and ultimately see this to fruition. Very competitive process, and we're very fortunate to be selected. That being said, we're very excited about that and what this means for our people and for the community as a whole. As he said earlier, we've been at our current facility for over 20 years. We probably outgrew that 15 years ago, and we've done the best we could with what we've had. And so this facility here, 60,000 square feet of this will be dedicated to clinic and health and wellness. It's an expansion of programs that we have of our pharmacy, podiatry, dentist, optometrist, and all the different services along those parameters. And so we're excited about what that means for our people, but also the natives as a whole in this community. As many of you know, the native population in the metro area is larger than all the reservations combined in this state. And so there's a lot of natives that live here, right here in the metro area, and that we serve both here in Omaha, Council Bluffs, Lincoln, and surrounding communities that come to Omaha for these services. As was mentioned earlier too, the transportation center. That's not only just for our people, but that's for the public in general. And there is a fee for that. But we bring people from as far away as Niobrara, which is 3.5 hours northwest of here, to come for our services and all points in between. And so it's a very dynamic program that we're very excited about. We have partnerships with the federal level, transportation, as well as the state on that for funding for that program too. And we look to expand that with this facility. And so those are some of the things that we'll be doing here. This is going to allow us to have a meeting space bigger than enough to, in our biggest space right now, we can probably fit 50 people max. And we have a lot more than that use our facilities. And we've done, like I said, we've done a lot with a little, and our people are excited about the opportunity that this will provide. Probably the most contentious piece of this whole property as far as moving forward, or that has been brought up in conversation, has been the sweat lodge and what that means. And so, as was discussed, we have made concessions and willingly, and we think this actually sits on the site better. But the purpose of the way this has been orientated is to even provide more consideration of separation from the cabinet maker and their property. With the building of this building here, our ceremony center, this is going to do everything that we want to do from a ceremony standpoint, our religion. And so this is based and partnered with our health facility, because we do a holistic medicine approach at our facility. So some of the sweat lodge services could be prescribed from a mental health standpoint as part of the medicine that we do here, and as well as from a religious standpoint. We feel that the extra buffer of the building sitting the way it is provides, again, that much more space from the fire away from the other property. And the fire pit that is accompanied with the sweat lodge, we think has been more than dealt with as far as minimizing any potential danger that's there. Somebody is always attending that fire when it's lit during a ceremony, regardless of when that's done, either during the day or in the early evening, and no one leaves that fire pit until it's completely out. We've had a sweat lodge at our current facility for the life that we've been there. We believe we have a very good relationship with the Omaha Fire Department, and we've met every requirement that they've asked for us to do regarding a sweat lodge and what we have, the setbacks that they require. Our current site is very small because of the space that we're in, and we've done the best we can in that site to meet all those things as far as permits and all those kinds of things. We know there's certain setbacks that are required. This is more than ample for what the fire department has told us has been required in the past. So we're excited about what this opportunity provides for our people to provide services for them to go to this place, have a ceremony, and have that conducted in a respectful manner with privacy. And there was talk about why didn't we put this someplace else. This is one of the most private spots on this whole property that we feel would meet the demands of our people and as far as the ceremony goes. And so again, as much as people are excited about the building, the big space, more people seem to be excited about what the sweat lodge is going to be here and the opportunity to have its own spot, which it doesn't currently do. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any other questions that you may have.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, are there any opponents who wish to be heard?
Good afternoon, members of the City Council. My name is Danielle Dring. I'm at 8712 West Dodge Road, Suite 400 at the offices of Smith-Slusky Law. I'm here today with the property owners of the cabinet shop. Do you have your map with you? Borrow your map. This is a larger map, I suppose, than what there might be room for, so I'm gonna put it on the table this way.
Or you can put it on the table and it can,
And put it on. That's fine.
Yeah.
Thank you.
and they can give you a handheld mic so that you can talk from there if you like.
Working? Okay. So I represent Herb Grothy, his son Gary Grothy, and Gary's wife Julie. They own this parcel here, which seems to dissect the parcels that are being acquired by the tribe. This is where they're proposing to put the sweat lodge over here. It has been moved from where it was initially proposed on the east side of this parcel. Herb Grothy started this business as a cabinet shop quite some time ago. It's been his life's work. He built it from the ground up and has given it to his son to operate it as his son's livelihood. In the parcel to the north, this is going to be an auto body shop, and there's also a paint shop here. I'm not sure if the owners of this land were able to come today, but I know that they spoke in opposition of this project at the planning board as well. The largest concern does relate to the sweat lodge as identified by Mr. Beller and Mr. Wright. The biggest, I mean, without putting too fine of a point on it, ladies and gentlemen, the biggest issue here is whether or not this is going to increase the risk of a fire at either one of these businesses adjacent to this parcel. I spoke at length with Herb and Gary yesterday, and then I spoke with Daryl Giles at the Omaha Fire Department, and I believe Herb reached out to the Ralston Fire Department as well, so I'll turn the floor over to Herb here in a minute. What we learned was that the fire departments actually did not know about this project, and we learned today that the City Council didn't know about the opposition to this project until today either. What Herb has done is he's actually put together a dust management system at his property to reduce any sort of risk of fire or combustion. As we know, if you're burning any sort of fire, there is a risk that a loose ember will spark a flame somewhere else. It could carry and spark a flame somewhere else, and that is going to be our concern here. The tribe has been very transparent with us. They have shared with us their intentions for the property and how they have cooperated. Like Chairman Larry Wright said, he did move the initial location from here on the eastern side to the western side of the parcel and directed the fire pit even further west. But that still remains an issue, and it's Herb's position that where this building is over here on the southeastern portion of the land, it might be lesser intrusive to have a fire pit over here in this area, especially when considering the prevailing winds in the state of Nebraska come from the northwest and would carry embers to the southeast. That would leave either embers to be carried to the cabinet shop or, you know, across the railroad here. So this is why Herb has indicated to me and to his family members that this would be his preferred location. And I'm going to turn the floor over to Herb to express a few other concerns.
Hello, I'm Herb Grothy. I live at 13207 Polk. We've been in business for about 50 years, a little over 50 years. We built this building out there, and it was in 1982. That's where they're called Bellevue Cabinets. I met with Chief Larry, very nice, honest, sincere person. We talked about the sweat lodge and having it moved to a further location. And he agreed to have it moved over where he's got it now, further away. But I don't want a fire next to a cabinet shop. Picture a cabinet shop and an auto body paint shop. We're right in the middle of it. I mean, you couldn't ask for any worse conditions. We have a very hard time getting insurance on a cabinet shop. Real hard time. I mean, it's unbelievable. Try to get a hold of the insurance company, talk to them about what's the deal. Are you going to raise my rates? Are you going to keep me or whatever? They won't make a statement. Exactly yes or no. But just picture a cabinet shop in between of a body paint shop right up in the bar corner. We're right in the middle. And the prevailing wind. We've got a very large dust collector in the back. Our back of our building is really nice. We've got waste trailers back there. But sawdust and it's just like dynamite. It's like gasoline. It's just any spark will light it off. And any embers coming from the fire is lifting up. Prevailing winds, the time of the day. We're there until 5 o'clock every evening, but they're going to have evening services on the weekends and stuff like this. This is what I'm concerned of. It's not the rules and regulations of the fire. It's the location. Down by they want to call it a transportation center in the back of that, in that one corner. There's plenty of room down in the lower part down in there. Where we're at, we're way up high, and the lower part down in there is an ideal situation. It's more private. Chief Larry told me, he says, the reason we're having it over here is it's a surplus property. We bought this thing as a package. We only got 80 to 100 employees here. We don't need that much parking. And so we got to utilize the spot the best we can. So he's wants to use the sweat lodge there. This is a fire. I hope somebody shows you what a fire is. It's a 5-foot tall fire. It's a bonfire. And it's not a campfire. This is a fire. And there's no lid on it. There's a lot of regulations I like to see. I talked to the fire chief in Omaha. He was unaware of any of this stuff. He had no knowledge before or anything like this. I guess, again, I'd like to see it moved to the far location. It's, you can picture it, right in the center of this whole complex. He didn't want to move it on the lower part. He says it's better for the property. Well, I like to see the thing divided back up and put industrial buildings there like it was originally designed for. You know, put it on a tax roll. But it didn't work out. But I'd sure love to work with him and put it on a lower level. And I guess I don't really have much further to add. But I'd like to show him. have you guys see the fire, what a sweat lodge really is. And you guys make your decision on that.
I have one last closing remark.
Maybe Gary wants to say something? You want to show a picture of this is the back of the,
I do have a picture of what the back, do I need to switch it over here? Okay. This is what it's going to be the southern side of your building, correct? Herb?
this is the south side.
Danielle Dring again at 8712 West Dodge Road, Suite 400. This is going to be the southern side of the cabinet shop where the dust is collected here in this bin, and then air is recirculated, filtered, and the dust particles remain in here to be sorted out into the waste bins and transported to be safely disposed of. Herb spent a great deal of time designing and building this himself, and it has worked very well for the cabinet shop. As you can see, there aren't any piles of dust, any piles of sawdust existing on the property, but that doesn't mean that there aren't a few particles that would escape the sorting system and the transportation system. So this is really where the safety concern stems from. We would just ask that the tribe members be the good neighbors that they've been so far and continue to work with the property owners in this area. And Herb has expressed a willingness to work with them as well, and I'm sure that the auto body and paint shop would as well. We welcome any questions that you might have regarding our concerns.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other opponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed. Did you guys want a few seconds for rebuttal? Yes, please.
Thank you. Brent Beller, 1144 West Center Road. Just a couple clarifying points. The fire that we're talking about is on average 2 to 3 feet in height. So it's not I'm 6 foot-ish, so half of me is how big this fire is. Number two, so we don't currently own the property. So in terms of contacting the fire department here in Omaha as to this new location, that hasn't been done just because we don't own it yet. But every other fire that is with every ceremony, the fire department's always contacted, well aware of what we're doing. This is on the 26th and J. So clearly, as we go forward, if we're to get the approvals we need here, acquire the property, a big part of our plans would obviously let the fire department know what we're doing. So just wanted to clarify that because I think it was a little bit confusing.
Thank you. The public hearing is closed. Ms. Melton.
Well, I think since I have Chief Holson and Chief Bossman sitting back there, would one of you be willing to come down and talk about this if you have any knowledge about what goes on at 26th and F? I understand you weren't necessarily here for this, but or might not have been attending the meeting for this topic.
Yeah.
Yeah, J, 26 and J.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, council members. I'm Dan Olson, Omaha Fire Chief. I am not aware of the current situation at 26th and J. I apologize for that, but I did receive a phone call from Mr. Grothy some time ago expressing concern related to the sweat lodge. Obviously, we respect the religious beliefs of the Ponca tribe, and the good news is here that we do have codes in place to deal with these types of situations, and we have a dedicated division, the Fire Prevention Division, that is aware of this project, and they have been tasked with looking into the project. And anytime there's any type of open burning in the city limits of Omaha, they have to apply for a permit.
Okay, so the permit for the sweat lodge, that's not what we're doing today. This special use permit just has to do with planning. There's another permitting process they would have to go through your department in order to have the actual burning.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, and I think that's an important clarification, that even if this special use permit passes today, that doesn't necessarily guarantee the ability to burn on the property.
Yes, that's correct.
And maybe you don't know, but I mean, if you recall, or is there anybody that can say, have there been numerous reports at 26 at their current location that it sounds like they've been there about 20 years and have been having a fire using fire for their ceremonies. Do you know of any problems or any fires that have occurred there?
I apologize, but I can't speak to that. I have not been made aware that there have been any reports of, complaints or fire issues in that area.
And so when you're looking at the permit, would you take into consideration the fact that there is a cabinet making facility that obviously, and from what I'm hearing, I've never thought about this before, but I guess when you're making cabinets, you would have a lot of that dust, and that dust would be highly flammable, so to
That's
speak?
absolutely correct, yes. Dust particles are extremely flammable, and as it was expressed to you, any type of ember that could be in contact that, in combination with the amount of oxygen that's available or air that's available, could be extremely dangerous. That goes, the same could be said for the auto body shop and the flammable liquids that are stored in those types of businesses. But with that said, our codes are more related to the setbacks and the distance from fire to the businesses or the structures that would be in proximity to those fires.
Is that something you would take into consideration when you're determining whether or not they should be given a permit? Would you take into consideration maybe the special circumstances of the businesses surrounding it, where maybe they have the right setbacks, but because we have maybe these other businesses that are unique, that should be taken into consideration in addition to the setbacks?
I think common sense would tell you yes, but once again, we have to defer to the codes. And I would have to research this, because this is the, as I was made aware of this situation, I assigned this to our inspectors to go out and look at the plans. This is something that our plans reader would most likely take a look at and make a determination based off of those codes. And then they would advise whether or not a permit would be allowable or not.
Okay. And the further away it is, I mean, I think the suggestion was maybe moving it to another location. Obviously, the farther away it is from the cabinet-making facility, I guess the better it would be.
Common sense would tell you yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for
Absolutely.
having those conversations. It sounds like you'd make yourself or your department, your fire prevention department, available so that if they want to talk about this further, they could work more in conjunction.
Yes, and I apologize for not being educated in this particular situation. This is a fairly new issue that's been brought to our attention, and I haven't received any feedback on it yet. So I'd be happy to follow up with any feedback if warranted.
Well, and I appreciate you coming down and speaking on it without any notice. So I do want to call attention to the fact that I just asked you to walk down here right at this moment.
It's my pleasure.
So
Yeah,
thank you very
thank
much. Mr. Beller, if you could.
Brent Beller, 1144 West Center Road.
Thank you. And what it sounds like today is even with opposition, they're not opposed to the entire project. I mean, this is a great project that we have here, especially with the health services that are going to be provided to so many people in the area. So we're really kind of limited. It's not from what I'm hearing, at least from Danielle, you're not objecting to the entire project. It's limited to just the sweat lodge, which is an extremely important part of what the Ponca tribe needs for their area, because that's part of the holistic and religious aspect of what they want to do. What I'd like to do is see how maybe, at least when you're moving forward, if this were approved today, because I think it's important to approve this special permit for the big project. I'm not so sure that the location, though, of the sweat lodge is maybe the right location. Would your clients be willing to maybe relook at that again with Omaha Fire Department to maybe make the appropriate determinations? Because I'm assuming the Ponca tribe does not want to set the cabinet maker's place on fire either,
Right.
even accidentally. So if there's anything we could do to remove those chances and maybe work with the Omaha Fire Department, even though they have codes, and this lodge may fit under the code, that doesn't necessarily mean, like what Chief Olson said, that common sense would tell you, if there's this place over here that would be better, let's maybe try and move it.
Sure, and I think that the easy answer is, of course, we'll work with them, and we have to work with them to make sure that we get the permit we need to do to have this fire in place. So, understanding it's a bit of a fluid process, and this is the proposed site plan, but the reality is yeah, we'll go through the standard procedures that we have to get this sort of use and this permit to allow for the open flames.
Okay, and you were aware that, obviously, I know you were, Mr. Beller, but was everybody aware that what we're doing today really is not allowing the use, is not giving
That's
a
right.
permit for the fire at this point?
Absolutely. I mean, we're here for the conditional uses, the special use permit for the medical services, but the open flame and having that permit, totally understand that that's a separate approval process.
Okay, because that's my only concern. I want to see the sweat lodge, but I just want to see it in the right place for all of the neighbors and the Ponca tribe themselves. And I'd say, would you like to come up, Mr. Wright, or Chairman Wright?
Thank you. Larry Wright, 2602 J Street. The part of the conversation that stated, why don't we put it down to where the transportation center is? The reason why that does not work for us is because it is on a lower spot. And so if there's a ceremony going on, somebody could be in one of the buildings that's higher up looking down into it. And when you're in that ceremony, it's not that there's secret things going on, but the intent is to have as much privacy as possible. And that location is right off of 84th Street as well. And so the traffic noise that would be incurred during that time, and there's traffic on that road at all times of the day. Not that we're doing this at midnight per se, but typically this could happen in the afternoon. It could happen, and it usually happens early in the evening. And so that traffic noise would be a hindrance to what's going on there, because those songs, all the ceremony aspects to that, we're looking for privacy, quiet. This isn't a loud activity. And so any of those ancillary noises are amplified when you're doing that ceremony. And so you're trying to eliminate all of those things as much as possible. So the location itself, in where it's located now, provides as much privacy as we possibly can. And again, trying to move it as far away from the other properties as we can, and be mindful of that, higher fencing, all those kinds of things. And so that's, that was part of our willingness to be accommodating, but that other location just is not a preference for us. It just doesn't work. And so, the current location, how it's set up, we understand the process. We want to go through that. We want everybody to be comfortable with what we're doing, but that other location just isn't feasible.
Okay, well, then I was kind of hoping that there would be a little more open-mindedness about maybe different things we could do to make it more feasible, especially due to the fact that, somebody's livelihood is at stake. And
we're very mindful of that, and we want to do everything, and we'll do everything that we can to help, address that, be mindful of what the fire department is asking us to do, and work to that solution. But to do it in that location just doesn't, it doesn't, short of explaining how the sweat lodge works, it just doesn't work in that, because it's not a closed space.
well, and I guess I have a question for law, and you may or may not be able to answer that right now. When the city is giving a fire permit, do we require a level of insurance for the person taking out the permit?
I believe there is an insurance requirement built into Chapter 46 to get a permit.
Okay, and they have a certain dollar amount?
I believe it depends on the type of permit you're getting. I think there are insurance requirements in them.
So in the event that this fire damaged a neighbor, there would at least be some options for the aggrieved party.
There would be some insurance that they could pursue. Whether it would be enough is, I think, a fair question, depending on the area or whatever else. I don't think there's flexibility. I think there's some minimal requirements that are part of that process.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hardy.
Thank you, Mr. President. Chairman, if you wouldn't mind saying, I'll probably have a couple questions for both you and Mr. Beller. And I believe the question was asked, but I'm not sure we got complete clarification on it. You've been at your current location at J for how long?
20 years.
Okay, and you have been having the ceremonies at that location. And can you give me a little history on, because I think the question was asked of the chief, but maybe the chief didn't have the information, but I'm sure you probably know how often there were any concerns with that.
You know, off the top of my head, I can't tell you the last time we've had a complaint about doing the ceremonies that we have there. In the summertime, those are more consistent. Usually it's done Friday, Saturday evenings throughout the summer. Sometimes there may be an afternoon ceremony, and that's usually on the weekend. Even now, our schedule would be, was it Friday nights, 7 o'clock is usually when it's scheduled. Now, that doesn't always happen. Sometimes the weather affects that because this is all outside. And so I know in the past there's been inspections of our site and the setbacks that are required. And we feel we've been in compliant with all of those. We haven't had an issue from the fire department or telling us to shut down. There's one a couple blocks away, a station a couple blocks away, so we haven't, to my knowledge, had any issues, and our CEO is here and would attest to the same.
Okay.
So we think if there has been anything, we've addressed it. We just haven't had anything.
All right. So, and I know it's been explained a few times, but remind us again that the fire is only about 3 feet tall, is that right?
Yeah,
Or?
you know, I've been doing this about 30 years.
Yeah.
Going to ceremony, and I've I've been the firekeeper many, many times, and from start to finish, there's somebody attending that fire. In all the years that I've been going, the flames have never gotten taller than this, and so at its peak, and then it burns down, and eventually the wood burns away. The rocks are heated and ready to go for ceremony. Max time, 2 hours, and as it burns down, and then the ceremony is conducted, and then when that's done, the embers are all extinguished, making sure everything's taken care of, and then the ceremony's over.
And you said something that I was going to ask, but so if you wouldn't mind just repeating it if I heard that correctly, but the fire is always staffed.
Correct.
By someone to make sure that things aren't getting out of hand, or if something were to maybe fly away, or.
Correct.
Okay.
As soon as that is started, it is that person's job, and sometimes there's several people there, because when the fires start, people come and gather and talk, and that's that time of community. And when people go into the ceremony, there may be a couple sitting out, but if not, at the very least, the firekeeper's there, because they're the ones that bring the rocks into the sweat lodge, but they're there to make sure that all of those that are inside are being tended to, and also making sure that the fire is okay.
Okay.
Yeah, because all of that to us is part of the ceremony. It's sacred once that fire is lit, and so everything is addressed. So we don't want our property to burn down. We don't want anybody else's, and we want to carry this out in the best way that we possibly can, and making sure that everything is safe and protected. So.
Okay.
Regardless if it's here in town or if it's out in the field in Niobrara where we have our other one, it's the same process.
Okay. And then I think you, the plan, the site plan that you showed, and you made some comment, or maybe Mr. Beller made some comment about initially that was a little further to the east.
Correct.
That you've moved it. I think too in the rendering that you showed, and maybe I didn't hear any mention of it, maybe I missed it, but it also looked like he had some, if you want to put that up, that'd be great.
I'm not sure how to run this, but okay.
Unless you turned it off, they'll run it. They'll run it. They'll run it for you.
That was the night view, Ben. No, I'm sorry, not the plan, the rendering that you had.
Okay.
Thanks. And I know it's a rendering, and we always make renderings look nice and pretty, or as much as we can, but it also looks like you've provided some additional buffering, maybe with some tree lines and things of that nature I would assume that's for a couple reasons. One, you mentioned something about, kind of the view, why the other location might not necessarily work, the view in. So this is not only maybe protection from, but maybe a sound leaving the site, or being able to kind of screen some of those maybe looking in, as
Right.
well as, certainly I would think that would help with some of the other issues that we're talking about here.
Absolutely, the buffering away from everybody else, I guess if we want to be flippant about it, protect them from us so they don't have to hear us singing. You definitely don't want to hear me singing the ceremony songs, but the trees help with that. The fencing around it will be as high as we can as far as code goes, material, whatever the fire department would request of that on a new construction. We're happy to entertain that, to be as protective as we can. And again, we want as much privacy here, and that cuts down on the wind and those kind of things as well. So once we're in here, we want to protect what we have here. We're next to a high school, not saying things happen, but I used to be a teacher, things happen. And so we want to protect our property too, and those things that are in there. So when people are on site, they know what they need to do to be protective and respectful of the property for our own people, but also for our neighbors, which we feel we've done in our current location and have done that well.
Okay. And then also, one of the reasons I wanted to go down that path too is that I think, even through this process and through planning board and the public meetings and your conversations with Mr. Grothy as well, that you have been open to listening to questions and concerns and other alternative plans. And I think this plan demonstrates, that the movement from the initial site. One other thing you just mentioned that I wanted to bring up was you talked about wind, and I know that Ms. Dring brought that up as well. Look, I was born and raised here in Omaha, Nebraska. I'm not going to pretend I'm Bill Ranby, but I think the prevailing winds, at least in the Omaha area, are more southerly to northerly rather than northwest to southeast, as I think was explained. Not that the wind doesn't blow from the north, obviously, but I think the issue of prevailing winds is not necessarily one that's an overriding factor in this case. The one last point I was going to bring up, and I don't know that it makes too much of a difference one way or another, but the mere fact, and I understand that an ember is of concern maybe to the neighbors, but by the very nature of their own business and having to install their filtration devices, that sparks even created within their own facility could create an unfortunate situation. But I think with the precautions that you've taken with the way that this is laid out, and certainly with the history that you have at your current location, I feel comfortable with the plan as it's been presented, and I'll be in support of the special use permit.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Mr. Palermo.
Thank you, President Gray. Chairman, just a couple more. I think most of the questions I had have already been asked, so that's a good thing. Obviously, the services you're going to be providing are much needed. And just a few quick things here. The property being vacant for 6 years, welcome to the neighborhood. $30 million investment on the tax rolls. I didn't catch how many possible new jobs or training this would provide.
Well, just on the clinic side of it, we're looking at over 100 new jobs that will be created from service providers, all on the healthcare side. That does include expansion of programs and services that we provide on the tribal side, which there will be some, but that'll be a different growth pattern, but it will allow us for growth. We also are looking at partnerships with different entities around town. We have a good relationship with UNMC, Creighton University, on doing things with our current clinic, and we're looking at strengthening our internship program with those entities so that as their students graduate and are looking for positions, we definitely have a need. And as a tribal organization, we're uniquely positioned over our relative tribes in the fact that we're in an urban setting, and many in our region don't have that benefit. And so to attract qualified personnel in those kind of critical areas, we're in a position to be able to do that more and more, and especially with this facility and being able to expand the programs and services that we plan to, we'll definitely have a need. They won't all be tribal members. They won't all be natives, but there'll be people that will provide services to our tribal citizens and to the natives in this community, as the community as a whole, because our clinic, the plan is to open that up to everyone. And so we'll have that ability, and we're excited about that opportunity.
Okay, thank you. That was my most important question I got. Thank you.
Okay. Mr., are you finished?
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Festerson.
Thanks, Mr. President. I think most of the questions have been asked too that I was interested in, but I did want to follow up on one comment you made. I think you noted that Omaha, being an urban area, has the highest number of Native American in terms of population than any other place in the state, including actual reservations. Can you give us an estimate of what that population is?
I think roughly, we're at 12,000 estimate on numbers. Don't quote, I don't hold my feet to the fire, but those are the latest numbers that I've seen. And when you combine Omaha, the metro area here, with Lincoln, those two locations more than the whole state. And so, I mean, we have a big population here, and this facility here will be an asset to the community, not only to the metro area, but also to natives in Lincoln, that through our transportation program and all those different services, we'll be able to bring in and access this in a unique way that they don't have access to now.
Yeah, so I appreciate you doing that, and I didn't want it to go without saying that I think that's quite an important thing you're doing, not only for that population, but for the broader population you're describing as well. And several of us were by your 26th and J property just last week, and I can see how this will be a great improvement and of great service to them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Bet.
Thank you. Just one comment. I don't think there are any other lights. I just wanted to have one comment, and that's as someone who has, in a previous life, before joining the council and working for television, had an opportunity to sit in on a sweat lodge. So, and the photographer there can pretty much testify to that, that I sat in on a sweat lodge. So I'm less concerned about the fire because I've seen how well attended those fires are and how that whole process works. So I'm less concerned about that. I just wanted that as a comment to, so people understand. I was a part of that, and I watched the ceremony, was part of the ceremony, and I recognized how attentively you guys handle that. So I have less concerns about that, but and I'm supportive of it as well.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
There are no more lights. Is there a motion? Moved and seconded to approve item 12. No further lights. Roll call.
Milton. Yes. Pauls.
Yes.
Palermo.
Yes.
Festerson.
Yes.
Harding.
Yes.
Jerem.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 12 is approved, 7-0. Item 13, a resolution to approve the special use permit to allow body and fender repair services located southeast of 42nd and Leavenworth Streets. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval.
Public hearing on agenda item number 13 is today. Proponents, please.
Good afternoon, Luke Weatherly, Olson Associates, 2111 South 67th Street, here on behalf of the applicant. I do have a map or a quick exhibit showing the property. This is on the southeast corner of 42nd and Leavenworth. Is currently a parking lot owned by Nebraska Medicine or the Board of Regents of Nebraska. There is an agreement in place to transition the current Charlie Graham auto body shop that's on the northwest corner to the southeast corner. And this is simply the special use permit to move that project forward. Be happy to answer any questions if you have them and if I'm able. So,
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, are there any opponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Mr. Jerem.
Yes, Mr. Weatherly, at what point will there be elevations available to?
oh, I have an elevation here actually. So the elevation was submitted with the special use permit. This is fairly consistent with the existing building across the street. One of the important things that the neighbors brought up, we did have a neighborhood meeting, I believe back in October, or early October, late September of last year, before planning board, was the Charlie Graham sign that's there. So the business will still be branded Charlie Graham, and that sign will be located on the south edge of the building. And this is kind of the way that it looks currently.
Well, I want to thank you for sharing those and also share that the neighborhood is in support of this and didn't want to lose everyone thinks of it as a body shop, but it's actually where a lot of people get their mechanical needs addressed for their cars. And more than a few teenagers have gotten their first car off the lot. So I want to wish the business well and get this thing going. So motion to approve.
I did forget to mention Bruce Hanson, the owner of Great Plains Auto Body, is here with me as well. So I'm sure he's glad to hear that.
I'll second this motion. Thank you. It's been moved to more lights. It's been moved and seconded to approve. Roll call.
Melton. Yes. Pauls.
Yes.
Palermo.
Yes.
Festerson.
Yes.
Harding.
Yes.
Jerem.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 13 is approved, 7-0.
Thank you.
Item 14, an application to consider a Class C liquor license for Catch 22 Inc., doing business as Red Eye Tavern and Grill, located at 8437 West Center Road.
Public
Hi.
hearing agenda item number 14 is today. Proponents, please.
Thank you, Mr. President, City Council. My name's Todd Metis, 9378 Douglas Street. And I'm buying an establishment. It's been around for about 24 years now. And I'm just here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, are there any opponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Mr. Harding.
Mr. Meadows, I just wanted to welcome you to the neighborhood. It's a longtime establishment, has a great reputation, and I know you and your wife will carry that on and improve upon it. So good luck.
Thank you, Morgan.
No more lights. Is there a motion?
Move to approve. Second.
Moved and seconded to approve item 14. Roll call.
Melton. Yes. Pauls.
Yes.
Palermo.
Yes.
Festerson.
Yes.
Harding.
Yes.
Jerem.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 14 is approved, 7-0.
Thank you.
Item 15, an application to consider a Class I liquor license for Jesse's LLC, doing business as Jesse's Place, located at 2311 North 24th Street.
Public hearing agenda item number 15 is today. Proponents, please.
Good afternoon, President, City Council. I'm Marcella Bogart, address 2311 North 24th Street, Jesse's Place. I'm here to represent. If you have any questions or concerns.
Thank you, Marcella. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, are there any opponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Like what you do every Native Omaha Days.
Thank you.
Keep it going. Second, roll call.
Melton. Yes. Pauls.
Yes.
Palermo.
Yes.
Festerson.
Yes.
Harding.
Yes.
Jerem.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 15 is approved, 7-0.
Thank you.
Item 16, an application to consider a Class D liquor license for RANA Properties LLC, doing business as NP Mart, located at 4229 North 60th Street.
Public hearing on agenda item number 16 is today. Proponents, please.
Achad Nazir, 16962 Polk Street in Omaha, Nebraska, 68135. I'm the owner of NP Mart. I have one other location in your other district and 52nd and Radial, Mr. Festerson's district. So if anybody have any questions, I'm here.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard? Did you want to say anything?
Hi, I'm Ann Gordon. I live at 3907 North 67th. I've worked for Arshad for, 3 years now. I'm very happy. He does very good for our area. Any questions, feel free. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, are there any opponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. And this one is the third one in my district that you're going for right now. And I did want to say to you, thank you for cleaning up the 2 properties that you currently own.
We have some good plan for this one, so hopefully.
Yeah, we've already talked about those plans, so I'm excited about them. But I just wanted to thank you for cleaning up some of the areas and some of the problem properties that we've had in the past. They've been cleaned up by you, and I appreciate that. Just wanted you to know.
Thank you.
There's been a motion.
Motion approved.
Second, roll call.
Melton. Yes. Pauls.
Yes.
Palermo.
Yes.
Festerson.
Yes.
Harding.
Yes.
Jerem.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 16 is approved, 7-0. Item 17, an application to appoint Sharista Siraj as manager of SSB Brothers LLC, doing business as Tobacco Road Discounts for their Class D liquor license located at 1414 South Saddle Creek Road.
Public hearing agenda item number 17 is today. Proponents, please.
Time light over.
Seeing none, are there any opponents?
Is there time?
It's a time to lay it over.
I don't have the date.
45 days.
I think you might be able to.
Time to lay it over.
I don't know if she puts the 45 days on there. June 17th. We would have time to lay it over to the 13th.
Yeah,
Yep.
okay.
Move to lay over to the next meeting.
Motion and second to lay over number 17 for 1 week. There's no lights. Roll call.
Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Festerson. Harding. Jerem.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0. Consent agenda. Any member of the city council may cause any item placed on the consent agenda to be removed. Items removed from the consent agenda shall be taken up by the city council immediately following the consent agenda in the order in which they were removed unless otherwise provided by the city council rules of order.
The public hearing on agenda items numbers 18 through 24 were held on January 30th, 2018. Moved and
We
second.
have a
And then
couple
can we,
amendment of the holes.
We have a couple of amendments.
can we remove items
Oh, that's
21 and
right.
22?
Move items 21 and 22. Is your motion for?
To approve items 18 through 20 and 23 through 24.
Roll call?
Melton.
Yes.
Pauls.
Yes.
Palermo. Festerson. Harding. Jerem.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0. Item 21, an ordinance levying a special tax assessment for cutting and clearing weeds, grass, and worthless vegetation on certain lots in the city of Omaha, Group 2018-04, A's an amendment of the whole. Item 22, an ordinance levying a special tax assessment for litter removal on certain lots in the city of Omaha, Group 2018-05, A's an amendment of the whole.
Move 21A and 22A.
Moved and seconded. The amendments have been moved on items 21A and 22A as a whole. No further lights. Roll call.
Melton.
Yes.
Pauls.
Yes.
Palermo.
Yes.
Festerson. Harding. Jerem.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0.
The public hearing on agenda items numbers 25 through 40 are today. If you wish to address the city council regarding these items, please come to the microphone, indicate the agenda item number you wish to address, identify yourself by your name, address, who you represent, and if you are a proponent or an opponent.
Luis Jimenez, 518 at North 40th Street. I'm proponent for items 27, 33, 34, and 35. The mayor's asking for some funds to buy from Husker Auto Group some pickups, and one of them has to do with the Environmental Quality Control Division. So I'm going for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no others, public hearing is closed. Mr. Festerson.
Thanks, Mr. President. I just wanted to make one note on item number 30, which is in the Country Club Hills Neighborhood Association area. A development previously approved at 63rd and Girard approximately. There was an outlot situation where some trees were taken down that shouldn't have been taken down and subsequently infilled with some dirt from another project. But I think what we have in number 30 is a positive resolution to that, and I want to thank the planning department for working on this. That goes back about a year ago, both with that developer and with the neighborhood, which represents substantial tree mitigation as part of this plan on number 30. So I'll be supportive of that, and will second the motion to approve all these items.
It's been moved and seconded to approve items 25 through 40. There are no further lights. Roll call.
Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Festerson. Harding. Jerem.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Items 25 through 40 are approved 7-0. Item 41, an ordinance approving an amendment to a grant award contract with the Nebraska Department of Natural Resources for the Combined Sewer Overflow Program to authorize the increase of grant funds received in the amount of $1,073,908.
Public hearing on agenda item number 41 is today. Proponents, please. Seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Next item.
Item 42, an ordinance approving a redevelopment tax increment financing loan agreement with Center 60 Hospitality LLC to implement the Center Aloft and Baxter Arena redevelopment project plan in an amount up to $2,125,000.
Public hearing agenda item number 42 is today. Proponents, please.
Good afternoon, Bridget Hadley, City Planning, here to answer questions you may have.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, are there any opponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Next item.
Item 43, an ordinance to amend section
I'm
20.
sorry, is there a light? I'm sorry, Mr. Hart.
I did. I just, because sometimes we gloss over those after, when we get to the third reading. I just wanted to thank the developers for their investment in the area, as well as I just wanted to point out that I like to do these on the TIF projects, but it's only 14% on the TIF, which is standard or certainly within the reasonable range. And that's, I just wanted to bring those points up. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. I think we're about to take a vote, so roll call.
That's only public
Nope,
hearing.
Oh, it's only public. I'm
Public
sorry,
hearing.
right. Next item.
Item 43, an ordinance to amend section 23-177 of the Omaha Municipal Code by changing the salary for the employment classification known as City Maintenance Foreman 3 from 15.2 MC to 18.2 MC.
Public hearing agenda item number 43 is today. Proponents, please. Seeing none, are there any opponents? Proponent? Opponent?
Thank the City Council for your time. Steve Herber, 7613 North 153rd Circle. I'd like to speak against this ordinance. My knowledge of this is I spent 26 years as a city street maintenance employee, 20 in management, the last 17 in this classification. Twice before, we tried to do this through going proper channels of job studies and were turned down twice to get an increase. You lost 100 years of knowledgeable service because of this. And I see no need for this when they have no more employees than we had, they have no more responsibility than we had, and twice we were denied an increase like this. So I don't see any justification for this ordinance.
Does that complete your testimony?
Yes, unless
Okay.
you have a question.
Thank you. I don't know that we have one right now, but we'll see. Do you have a question?
Well, after the vote.
We have to ask if there's anybody else in opposition, and if not, then we'll close the public hearing and ask questions. Is there anyone else in opposition? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed. Mr. Harding, are you still, your light's still on? No. Okay. Mr. Palermo.
Thank you, President Gray. Was it Mr. Herber?
Yes.
Got a question for you. So obviously you've did this job before.
17 years.
Okay. I don't think we've ever met, but if we do, I don't remember, so I
No,
apologize.
I never met you, sir.
Why don't you tell me what they could do better now?
Excuse me?
Like what, the Foreman 3, they're in line for this classification change, and you said that at one point you were denied this change. What?
Twice. Once we went to Scott McIntyre, street maintenance engineer, asked about an increase. He told us to go through the channels, which we went to Mr. Jim Bagley, did a job study, were denied. Years later, we did it again. This time there were conversations with Mr. Fitzer. We did the job study again, denied again through Mr. Bagley. I don't see where these managers are doing anything more than we did. They don't have the employees that we had. I had a lot more employees than they have currently, more responsibility. And we used to put in 500 and 600 hours in snowstorms, floods at the river, and we're not compensated for it. I don't see a need for this.
Okay, that answered my question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next item?
Well, I mean, I had a couple questions too.
Oh, you had a couple more questions?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I
Go
guess
ahead.
on the other end for Mr. Rouser. Now, Mr. Herbert, sorry, down with you.
Austin Rouser, Omaha Public Works.
Thank you. I would just say that before I got on the council, I experienced the road issues we're having. Knocking on doors during campaigning, I learned about the road issues we're having, and now I get to live those road issues. I'm not per se picking on this classification change, but it's my job to ask the question, why? We heard from Mr. Herber about them having more people than you, and in all fairness, I had some questions and you answered them great. Thank you for that. But what we have today currently is less than what we had 5 years ago, per the information you gave me and per the information I had asked for about a month ago that I received. So do the Foreman 3s now have more AEO 1s, 2s, 3s, MR2s that are under them, or less?
More. The most significant changes in the last several years would be in the MR2 classification. In 2017, we added 9 MR2s to the street maintenance budget, so there was 9 additional there. Operator 2s, that's AEO2. We added 3 additional in 2017 also. So that's the increase in headcount that we've had recently. One of the issues that you mentioned is just talking about, what can we do better? How can we do better work? And one of the trends that we have right now in my organization is that we continue to implement new technologies. I know our work order system has evolved significantly over the last 10 years. We continue to adapt new technology. Even now, we're implementing new snow technology as far as tracking tools. We're getting ready to release public-facing websites so that people can see operational status of snow. So these are all things that these Foreman 3s are engaged in that years ago they didn't have to do. And also, as we had talked about, we've got the increase in contractors that they have oversight of. There are personnel from other divisions that come over and are overseen by these Foreman 3s, the district foreman. Difference in years past, I think years ago there were always support help that was given as well, but that support help was managed separately by its own foreman, whereas we've evolved to a point to where those additional people that come and support help, they're managed by our foreman, so they take them in and they oversee all of their assignments and oversee their work. So there's been changes significantly in the past several years, as well as the increased employees through our budget.
Sure. And I guess I keep going back to the employee thing because what you gave me 2 years ago, there was 33 employees, and based on what I got most recently, I added it up and divided it, and there's 28 employees per Foreman 3. So I guess, is it more or less? From what I have, it's less.
I think I sent you 35, so I'm not sure where the 28 number comes from.
It just comes from me adding up the employees that are underneath each Foreman 3 and dividing it by 5.
I'm not familiar with what you're looking at.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Well, you're not on trial. I'm just asking questions. Sorry.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying the Foreman 3 don't deserve a raise. They probably do. But what really made me think about this is the fact that it's a 15+% raise.
Sure. And really the reason for that significant of a raise is based on the pay discrepancy between the Foreman 1 classification as a non-exempt classification earning overtime. One of the difficulties becomes promoting people into the Foreman 3 classification because, hey, great, you get promoted, here's your $10,000, $12,000 pay cut. So that has been one of the problems that has persisted really for years. I mean, that's not a recent thing, but recently we have had turnover in there and probably have lost out on some of the best candidates for that promotion. And so we're really trying to correct that. And even still, with the pay scale that we're proposing, the average Foreman 1 with the overtime that they make, they would be the equivalent of approximately the C-step of what we're proposing now. So there does exist this pay discrepancy with the Foreman 3 position being an exempt position, with the Foreman 1 being non-exempt. So we're really just trying to correct that. The pay scale that we're proposing, if you were to equate that to a private sector job, it's very similar to a construction job site superintendent, which shares very similar duties. It's got a similar number of employees that report to it. It's got oversight over subcontractors. It's got responsibility for the contract and all of the rules and regulations and safety associated with that. So we feel like this is a very parallel type position to what you would see in the private sector.
Sure. And I know I keep mentioning a raise, and it's really a reclassification, but the bottom line is at the end of a 2-week period, they make more money. So, and again, I'm not saying they don't deserve extra money. It's just the 15% that really makes me think. And I also want to mention too, and that's it, thank you very much. I know Mr. Fitzer had sent me an email about saying maybe I was unhappy with Public Works, and that's not true at all. He sent me a kudo that somebody had sent in, however it filtered through. With that being said, here in about 2 hours, I'll probably have about 15 people sending me just the opposite when the snow hits. So just in all fairness, kudos are nice, but I'll send you what I get here shortly. But thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jerem.
Yes, Mr. Rouser, or I don't know if it's you or Mr. Bagley, is he here? I don't.
He's not.
Okay. First question I have was how the new classification wage range was determined. I'm familiar with other processes where we go out and look at what's going on in the comparable cities for comparable jobs, and if we're below that, then there's adjustment, and within the classification, then there's looking at what they do to determine, is this the right description for what it is they're actually doing on a day-to-day basis, and so sometimes there's this reclassification of their positions. But in this case, what I think I heard you say was there was a management determination in Public Works to address a promotional need by reclassifying and then calculating the new wage rate based upon a factor of the average overtime that the people you were looking and trying to promote would regularly be making at their existing rate versus what you wanted to promote them to. So unless there was this increase for the new classification, you didn't think your goal of promoting would be met.
I think
Does that
that's
make
a fair
sense?
summary. Yeah, I think that's a very fair summary. And there's actually quite a lot of history here, and Mr. Herbert referred to it in his remarks. We did do job studies in the past, and one of the requests that was made previously was that the CMF 3 position be changed to a city maintenance supervisor. And the rationale behind that was pay. At the end of the day, we didn't feel like those descriptions met the duties that these people were assigned to. And so that was why we continued to look at other ways to get this done. And so part of it was comparing the overtime and the pay of foreman ones to look at what the pay scale would be. The other part, as I mentioned, was comparing that to a comparable private sector type job and what that pay range would be, which would be a construction job site superintendent.
Okay. The next question I had for you is, will there be any corresponding impact to people's wages being adjusted who are either up the chain or below, so to speak, this new classification that will, as a part of a collective bargaining agreement or practice, require adjusting other people's wages?
You know, we feel like this is a correction in just one position that I don't believe will impact other positions.
Okay. Thank you. One of the other things I want to address is that I think for about a year to a year and a half, we've been hearing that it's been 20 plus years since the city has looked at its wage payment rates for in the non-sworn side of our operation. And there are a lot of hardworking people in those positions who come in here and are exemplar models of civil service and serving the public ably and in low-profile jobs, many of them, who are saying, well, what about me? And so I see Mr. Young here from HR. If you could come down and tell the people who are the non-sworn employees, what is the status of this comprehensive evaluation of how the city is compensating its employees? What is the process? Where are you in the process? And what the public should understand as to what the bottom line ultimately will be for how government is funded in the city.
Certainly. Tim Young, Human Resources Director at 1819 Farnham. The question that you just asked me has a lot of moving parts. And we're here today obviously focused on one position, and I understand the concerns behind that position. But to address what you just asked me directly, we're focused on, there's Local 251, there's ongoing negotiations right now, which I'm not going to get into here. We could do an executive session later on. But every employee, if they feel that they are working out of class or doing duties that they're not hired to do, they have the ability to go to Mr. Begley, our compensation manager, and ask for a job study. We have long since recognized that there is a need based on the fact that since the early 90s, since we've had a comprehensive city job study, and I've had conversations with all of the powers that be regarding the need to do that again, but that is a very expensive process. It's my understanding that the last time we undertook the process, it was in the hundreds of $1,000s range. So we have to find a way to do that systematically across the city. And I don't know what the timing is, when the timing is going to be right, but we are absolutely looking into that.
I think I think it was Ms. Frost, while she was here, actually shared with the council on multiple occasions that the 2018 was the year that process was going to happen, and it really wasn't triggered or tied to, as I understood it, the collective bargaining processes between Semtech and Local 251, respectively, in the city, which is addressing, well, how much do we pay our employees in terms of their what percent increase might they get for the next however many years the agreement is versus how much they pay into their pension, how much the city contributes to their pension, other working conditions and terms. And that should be at the table, and I'm not getting into that here at all today, but do I understand your position or the department's position now to be that they are tied together as a part of that bargaining process?
They're somewhat tied together.
Because what I heard you say was, well, if any particular employee thinks that they're not being paid for what they do comparably to other people in comparable cities or classified properly, they can come to Mr. Begley as the compensation manager and request a study. But I think, as I see that approach, if that indeed is what you're saying, to be one where it promotes a sense of intimidation in many cases for people who are very humble and private people who would never do that. And if the city hasn't undergone that process in 20+ years, and it has to be the person who then comes to Mr. Begley or your department, I don't know that things would change. So has there been a change in direction that the city really isn't going to do a comprehensive study that has to be requested, or?
Not to my knowledge. And towards the latter end of Mickey's career here, I was involved in many of those conversations. And the goal is and will be finding a way to get the comprehensive job study done. We recognize that we are long overdue for the study. And then just to address your point about the employee who doesn't want to come forward and ask for a job study, it's been my experience in the short time that I've been director that for every one of those employees, there are a couple more. It's the why me factor, and that's the question that you addressed to Mr. Austin, and you wanted to know what was going to happen if we did this. So we look at those, and one thing that Mr. Rouser didn't address before is they didn't just randomly come up with a 15% increase. What we did is we looked at the balance of the overtime differential, which he already explained, and we used the local, the HRAM data, HRAM's Human Resources organization, and they put out studies. So we compared that to the superintendent. But to address your question, it's a question of finding the timing and the funding to get the comprehensive job study done.
I hope you understand the position, at least from my perspective, that I somewhat feel that I'm placed in, is that if we do one-offs, like first we did the engineers, and well, they're underpaid, we can't attract and retain engineers, and then the department came in and made their case and convinced us that their engineers were undercompensated and needed to be adjusted. And now we have this one, same department, by coincidence, looking at these foremen and what they're paid and trying to promote them and finding they can't. But there's a lot of departments sitting up here, some that aren't here, and there's a lot of employees, couple thousand that are wondering, well, what about us? And I don't hear that there's any real definitive plan for the comprehensive study at this point, that it's still more of a goal.
At this point, it's more of a goal. There is no, I can't stand here before you and tell you that there's a definitive plan that we are going to commence this citywide comprehensive job study on this date. But those conversations have been ongoing, and we are taking steps to make that happen.
When you do that, do you have to start with the personnel board and say, okay, we want to, the department wants to analyze this position or these positions, or in the case of a comprehensive study, this is what we want to do for the city as a whole, non-sworn. What say you, personnel board, and then it comes to us, or is this something you could just do on your own?
Well, I heard Bernard turn his microphone on behind you, so I'll let him address that question.
I think what they're envisioning, sir, and this would not go to the personnel board. Typically, I think we would put out an RFP for a wage salary analysis of all our positions, and then whoever was chosen, that contract would come before the council for adoption, because I presume it would be in excess of the $20,000.
Thank you. Well, and thank you, Mr. Young. I appreciate your candidness. Since we know there really isn't a plan, and we're over 20 years into operating as a major employer in the city, that it's probably something I think the city should be doing to assure that all of our employees that we're treating them fairly, equally, because I think the more of these one-offs we get, we're excluding others and that deserve and are worthy of study and accountability and transparency, that they know that they're treated fairly, that we're valuing their service as an employee and as an employer, and that we are accountable and transparent with the public, is that here's who works here, here's how they're paid, this is why they're paid this way and this rate, and here's the justification for it. And I'm just concerned if we get more of these like this, that we open ourselves up, that we're giving favoritism to one department over another, and we don't want to have that situation. At least I don't. So, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Melton.
And I think what, I know maybe Mr. Young hadn't been around the entire time that Mickey Frost was here, but Mickey Frost, our prior HR, started doing this throughout all the departments for many positions about 4 years ago. And Mr. Enenbosch, isn't it, I mean, we see a reclassification of an employee, I would say at least twice a month on our agendas, and we have over the last couple of years. At this point, what happens is, we were talking about transparency, all of these go before the personnel board, which is, the personnel board is posted and open to the public, is that correct?
Yes, and the personnel board started a review of all the positions to make sure the job descriptions accurately reflected the duties. That was not an analysis of whether the pay was appropriate for those particular duties. And that's been the 7 or 8, 10 job descriptions a month that have been done every month by the personnel board for a number of years. When it comes to taking a look at issues here where we're looking at the appropriateness of the pay, those are usually started by either somebody making a request or a department saying, hey, take a look at it, an analysis then done by HR, and then that starts that process, and that's where you'll see coming forward with a change in pay range for a classification, which is something that's a little bit different. But you're right, there have been a number of those over the past couple of years. I don't know, I think 2 a month, maybe a little bit high. We've certainly we've created some positions, so maybe it's 2 a month that we've between creation and others, but this is certainly not the first time that this has come forward. But yeah, the personnel board certainly has been looking at all the job descriptions, and certainly before any recommendation for a higher pay range for a job, that absolutely goes to the personnel board, has to be considered. They will look at the job description, look at the pay range, ask a lot of the same questions we've heard here, usually more, and then make a recommendation one way or the other.
Right, because I'm very impressed, and if nobody has ever attended a personnel board meeting, the personnel board goes into a lot more in-depth into the questions we're asking about the job. Why should we make the change, making them justify what the change should be? And I mean, I guess we can have somebody go back, but I can tell you it's been quite a few. I mean, the other 6 of you sitting here, we've seen these increases and we voted on them over the last 4 years. So to make it seem like we haven't done anything and that we haven't done anything for 20 years, I think is inaccurate, because the other thing that we have to be concerned about is if you were to do that and then increase salaries for that many people all in 1 year, I'm not sure how our budget would be able to afford that. So, I mean, I think it's something that you need to be consistently doing, and you need to be consistently doing over time so that at some point we do catch up. Because I think doing it all at once in one study and then saying, oh, here, council, we're going to increase it by a couple $1 million in salary increases for next year, could actually break the bank for the majority of the departments that are sitting here right now. So I guess I would encourage HR to continue to do what they're doing, and I appreciate the fact that the Personnel Board is putting that much time and effort into making sure that the job descriptions are correct, but then what I would like to see is making sure that they match the pay to the job description, which is what we're doing here. I think we need to do more of it as we go along, and I don't necessarily think it has to necessarily be a comprehensive study until we can find the funding or we have an idea of how much we're willing to increase all those salaries. But to do it all in 1 year, I'm not sure would be fiscally responsible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, if you spend it all in 1 year, that would probably not be smart. Mr. Young, what I would like to see, and it could be an all-inclusive study, but we just can't approach it all at once. We have to know where we're at. And I know if everybody get paid probably what they should be paid, we probably couldn't afford it. You believe that? Is that true?
Probably.
But we ought to face a little reality and just say, this is what this job is worth. That way the Personnel Board won't have to come up and try to reanalyze some of these figures. If somebody comes in front of you, who comes up with the salary? From that department or from the personnel? I have not been. Who comes up with the salary?
It's part of the compensation package, so most of the salaries are already set. So I guess
right, if you want to change it or change classification. These classifications that we're talking about today, who came up with these classifications?
They were a combination of, I want to make sure I understand what you're specifically asking me before I misspeak.
Okay, what we are voting on, or what we're looking at today, the changes in the ranges.
Okay.
Who came up with that number?
Who came up with the salary number?
Yes.
That was a combination effort between Austin's team and Jim Begley's compensation team in Human Resources, based on the factors that I talked about earlier. The differential between the overtime pay between the foreman ones and the foreman threes, and then the Haram data that we were able to gather.
Okay.
The problem that we have, and I can't speak for prior administrations, I certainly am not going to try to do that, but the problem that I have seen in my experience with the city has been difficulty recruiting and getting highly professional positions, because they can certainly stay where they're at in the private sector and get paid a heck of a lot more money. So those are the positions that we initially focused on. Now, I'm not saying that to minimize the entry-level position, because they're important too, but we want to make sure that in the highest level positions, those are the positions with the highest amount of responsibility for the city and the citizens. Those are the ones that we are initially focused on, and we want to get the highest quality candidates. In Austin's circumstance, we had notoriously people that don't want promotions because they take a promotion and they get pay cuts. So Austin wants the best possible people in his highest level positions, and he wasn't being able to get those. I've seen the same thing in police and fire. You get to a certain rank, in my prior experience in other jobs, they don't want to be a sergeant or they don't want to be a lieutenant because they're not going to get the overtime and they're not going to get paid. So that's where we're focused.
So my salary range change may depend on how aggressive my department head is. Our director. I mean, be honest with you, if they're...
It's possible, but we'll still have to go through the system of checks and balances.
Right, but
the personnel board and the city council.
Right, but
he's being pretty progressive. He says, I need this, and this is what I'm willing to do. So I would be fortunate to be working under his jurisdiction if I wanted somebody to support me. If I'm in another department, if there's no change in this, because I've noticed that these things have been floating around for the last several years. So if we don't do a study, then I have to depend on the person over me is going to be aggressive enough to at least make an effort. I may not get it, and I may not deserve it. But that's what I got to account for, unless I have some outside group making a decision. This is where we could or should be.
Sure, and I understand that, and I'm quite confident that all of the directors that are sitting behind you know how the process works, and if they identify a need, that they would do the same thing as Public Works has done.
Okay.
Or at least that would be my hope.
Okay, thank you. That's all I need to know. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Young, I don't know that the answer was necessarily do an assessment of everybody at one time with the possibility of raising everybody, or that even whether that would come about as a comprehensive study. To assume that a comprehensive study is going to say everyone's underpaid, I think is equally overstating the possible process here. There's probably somewhere in between where the people who don't get to park in level A or level B, they don't even get to park in the parking garage in 19th and Harney, the people who put those boots on, who walk several blocks or who catch the bus, that they need to know that they're as valued here by us and respected as anyone else. And as I see it, I have concern there's too much emphasis at the top.
Okay, I understand, and again, like I said earlier, my purpose here today is not to minimize the entry-level employee, but in certain positions, you have to take into account that the higher-level positions, especially in public works and parks to a certain extent, those higher level positions are directly responsible from a safety perspective of the entry level positions. And we have to look out for their best interests as well. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There are no more lights. Next item.
Item 44, an ordinance to approve a contract services agreement between the Omaha Convention and Visitors Bureau, a department of the City of Omaha, and Tally Management Group, Inc., for promoting the City of Omaha for the period of January 1, 2018 through December 31st, 2019, with the option to extend for an additional 2 years in an amount not to exceed $60,000.
Public hearing on agenda item number 44 is today. Proponents, please. Seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Next item.
Item 45, an ordinance approving an agreement with the Omaha Council Bluffs Metropolitan Area Planning Agency to provide for terms and conditions under which MAPPA will conduct a mapping project for the benefit of the City of Omaha and other local governmental entities for a period that shall start upon adoption of this agreement until June 30th, 2023, to authorize the Finance Department to pay the city's cost share of $51,935.
Public hearing on agenda item number 45 is today. Proponents, please. Seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Next item.
Item 46, an ordinance approving an interlocal agreement with Douglas County for GIS services for the service period of January 1, 2018 through December 31st, 2022.
Public hearing on agenda item number 46 is today. Proponents, please. Seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Next item.
Items 47 through 57 do not require public hearing or city council consideration at this meeting, but will be placed on a future agenda for public hearing and/or vote. The reason for non-action is noted after the item on the agenda, as well as the date the item is expected to appear on the agenda for consideration.
Motion adjourned. So moved. Second. Moved and seconded. Roll call.
Melton. Melton. Yeah. Pauls.
Yes.
Palermo. Yes. Festerson.
Yes.
Harding.
Yes.
Jerem.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0.
You wanna-
Meeting adjourned at 3:44.